Welcome
to
back to the deep
Audiocast.
dive. Today we're undertaking what might be our most personal journey yet, a journey within the self.
Exactly. We're getting straight to the mechanics of it all. This is about the hard science behind why we behave the way we do.
Before we really jump in, I just want to say, if you're someone who believes that a person is more than just a simple reaction,
That behind every feeling, every thought, every single decision, there's a whole complex story that deserves to be understood.
then you are absolutely in the right place. And because this is an ongoing journey, we're doing this every day, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single step along the way.
Our mission today is pretty singular. We're here to answer that one fundamental question for you. Why do we act as we do?
It really is the ultimate riddle, isn't it? I mean, why do I react so strongly when I feel criticized, or why do I keep making the same mistakes? We tend to just write these things off.
We call them personality flaws or just bad habits. But the science we're looking at today, from some really incredible studies, tells a much deeper story.
Right. We've gathered research from Nature Neuroscience, from Harvard, from Stanford, and they all point to this idea that we're infinitely more complex than just a simple stimulus and response.
Every single action, even the ones that feel completely normal and automatic, is the end result of this huge hidden network in your brain. It's a story of energy, memory, environment, even genetics.
Okay, so let's lay out the plan for today. How are we going to tackle this?
We're going to move logically. We'll start with the fastest, the most unconscious parts of the brain, the decisions that happen in a split second.
The ones we
Welcome
don't
to
even notice.
Audiocast.
Exactly. Then we'll travel back in time to see how our childhood profoundly shapes those automatic responses. And finally, we'll get to the really practical part, the actual neuroscience of how you can change those ingrained habits.
So we're going from the programming to the moment where we can actually intervene.
That's the goal, to see how we're built and then to see how the science shows us we have this incredible power to rebuild ourselves if we choose to.
Let's get into it. And let's start with a statistic that, honestly, it just completely challenges how I see myself as a rational person.
I know the one you're talking about.
We all think we're in the driver's seat, making conscious, deliberate choices all day. But then you see this study from 2021, published in Nature Neuroscience.
And it's a bombshell.
It says that 90% of our daily decisions are made before we consciously realize them.
Welcome to Audiocast.
It's almost my entire day running on autopilot.
It's a massive number, and it forces us to completely reframe what we mean by choice. When you think you're choosing something like which person to talk to at a party, your brain has, in many cases, already made the call.
And my conscious mind is just, playing catch up?
It's queuing up the justification for it. The deep dive has to start here by just acknowledging the sheer dominance of the non-conscious, the involuntary mind.
Okay, but I have to push on that a little, because that number, 90%, it sounds like you're telling me free will is basically an illusion.
That's the classic question, right? But the science doesn't eliminate free will, it redefines it. It
Welcome to
moves it from
Audiocast.
being this constant thing to being a very specific active intervention.
Okay.
The reason for this 90% dominance isn't philosophical, it's biological. And the first reason is just simple energy cost.
What do you mean by that?
Consciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, real, deep, reflective thought, the kind that happens in your prefrontal cortex, is incredibly expensive for your body to run. It burns a ton of energy.
More than, say, just walking around.
Oh, absolutely. Your brain is only about 2% of your body weight, but it eats up something like 20 to 25% of your total oxygen and glucose just at rest.
Wow.
But when you engage in that heavy, conscious, lifting-like, trying to override a bad habit or solving a complex problem, the energy consumption in those specific brain regions just skyrockets.
The brain is designed to be lazy, in a way.
It's designed to be efficient. It's an efficiency engine. It wants to avoid that kind of deep thought whenever possible because it's metabolically
Welcome to
draining.
So it
Audiocast.
defaults to this low-power autopilot mode.
Precisely. Which brings us to the second reason. Speed. The involuntary mind, which uses older, more embedded parts of the brain, is just incredibly fast and effective.
This is the survival instinct part.
Yes, exactly. This system evolved for protection. If you see a snake, you don't need a 5-minute conscious debate about its species and potential threat level.
You just jump.
You just jump instantly. That fast, unconscious response is what kept us alive for millennia.
That makes total sense for primal threats. A snake, a speeding car, I get it. But where does this system trip us up in our modern lives?
It applies the same survival logic to things that aren't life or death, but feel like it to the brain. Think about social survival.
Okay, like what?
You walk into a room full of strangers, your unconscious brain is processing hundreds of tiny signals in milliseconds, posture, tone of voice, who's standing with who.
And it's making a judgment call.
It's making an instant call. Safe, unsafe, approach, avoid. That decision to trust or distrust someone is often made before you've even thought of what to say.
And then my conscious brain comes up with a story later. Oh, I just didn't get a good vibe from them.
Exactly that. When really, the automated system flagged something. Maybe they subconsciously reminded you of someone from your past and made the call for you to conserve energy.
This explains so much about habits. A habit is just the lowest energy route the brain can take.
It's the path of least resistance. It's why we get stuck in patterns, even bad ones. Whether it's how you manage your money or the type of romantic partners you're drawn to.
That idea of being drawn to what's familiar, even if it's harmful, that's powerful.
The non-conscious mind isn't looking for what's good for you. It's looking for what's predictable. Because navigating true novelty, true risk, is incredibly energy intensive.
And predictability feels safe, even if the predictable outcome is pain.
Exactly. The brain says, I know how to survive this situation. I've done it before. Let's do it again. Even something as simple as your route to work. You don't consciously choose every turn. It's automated.
So when we talk about the results of this system, we're talking about those instant reactions. The flash of anger when your boss gives you feedback.
Yes. Or the immediate urge to run away from a relationship when it gets serious.
Or the need to jump in and fix things for people even when they haven't asked.
All of these are decisions that the brain has already executed based on old patterns. Your conscious mind, the storyteller, is just lagging a few steps behind, trying to make sense of the behavior that's already happened.
So the first step is just realizing this system is running. If you don't even know you're on autopilot, you can't ever hope to take the controls.
That's the foundation. You can't debug a system you don't know exists.
Okay, that leads perfectly to the next, I think, really critical question. If 90% of what I do today is based on this automated system, where did the system get its programming?
Where'd the code come from?
Exactly. What data was used to build these super fast pathways in the first place?
And that takes us to the architectural blueprint. It takes us to the earliest years of life.
This is where we bring in that Harvard study from 2022.
Right. It provided some really compelling neurobiological evidence for what psychologists have suspected for a long time. The core finding is that our experiences between the ages of 0 and 7 form the fundamental non-conscious structure for all our future behavior.
0 to 7. That window feels so short, but it's everything.
It is the blueprint for the adult self.
But at that age, a child doesn't even have complex language. They can't reason abstractly.
Yeah.
So what is the mechanism here? Why is that period so much more important than, say, your teenage years?
Because it's not about understanding, it's about recording. The brain of a child in that window it's a very different machine. The number of connections being formed, the synaptic density is at its absolute peak. It's an information sponge.
But there's a crucial part of the brain that's not really working yet, right?
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex, the PFC, that's the part responsible for all the things we think of as adult thinking. Logic, impulse control, interpretation, filtering. In a child, it's still highly immature. It's mostly offline.
So it's like the recording studio is on, the mics are hot, but the editing suite is completely closed.
That is the perfect analogy. The parts of the brain that are fully online are the emotional centers, the limbic system, the amygdala, and the memory centers, like the hippocampus. So the child's brain is just recording raw data from the environment.
Raw emotional data.
Yes, the tone of a parent's voice, the feeling of being held, the emotional climate of the home. It's all being recorded without any filter.
Let's break that down because this is so important. What does it mean to record without a filter?
It means the brain is taking in information without the 3 crucial adult functions: thinking, interpreting, or judging.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say a parent is stressed about money and they snap at the child. An adult brain would interpret that. It would think, okay, they're stressed, this isn't about me.
Right, you'd have context.
The child's brain can't do that. It doesn't think, this anger isn't personal. It doesn't interpret, this is temporary. It certainly doesn't judge the parent's behavior. It just records the raw data. A loud noise, a scary face, a feeling of danger, and it links that data to the concept of connection or love.
And that becomes an immutable fact of reality for the child's developing brain.
It's written into the operating system. If the world feels scary or unpredictable during those 7 years, that becomes the default setting for life. It's not a memory you recall, it's a system you inhabit.
And this unfiltered recording is what leads to what the research calls behavioral fingerprints of childhood.
Yes. These are the deep psychological patterns that grow with us. We often think they're just who we are, but they are learned responses from that formative time.
Let's really spend some time on these, because I think this is where listeners will see themselves so clearly. The first one you mentioned is unexplained fear.
This is a really common one. It's that persistent, low-grade anxiety that doesn't seem to be attached to anything specific in your current life.
You're safe, your bills are paid, but you still feel this sense of dread.
Exactly. This fingerprint gets laid down in an environment where safety or emotional connection was inconsistent. If as a child you never knew if you were going to get a hug or a sharp word, your little nervous system learns that the default state of the world is threat.
So your alarm system is just set too high, permanently.
It's always standing for danger. As an adult, you're walking around with a higher baseline of stress hormones like cortisol, ready to react to a threat that isn't even there anymore. The threat is a memory from 30 years ago.
That explains so much. It explains why successful people can be riddled with anxiety, even when, from the outside, everything looks perfect. Their brain has logged safety as the exception, not the rule.
Right. The second fingerprint is a really specific kind of anxiety, tension that comes from a fear of rejection.
The people pleasers.
It's often rooted in that, yes. This comes from an early environment where love and connection felt conditional. If you only got praise when you were good, or quiet, or successful.
Or not a burden.
Or not a burden, yes. Then the brain learns that rejection or disconnection is a literal threat to your survival.
So as an adult?
As an adult, you become hypersensitive. A minor criticism from your boss feels like a catastrophe. A friend not texting back feels like abandonment. You're constantly, unconsciously trying to avoid being cast out because your inner 5-year-old believes that means death.
The third one is fascinating. Sensitivities to certain words or phrases.
This one is so visceral for people. A phrase like, "you always do this," or "why can't you just," can send a completely rational adult into an emotional spiral.
And it feels totally out of proportion to the situation.
Because it is. It's pure classical conditioning.
Right.
That specific phrase, or even just the tone of voice, was paired over and over again with a really intense negative emotion in childhood: shame, fear, inadequacy.
So the adult brain isn't even hearing the words.
It's hearing the emotional memory attached to the words. The sound bypasses your logical prefrontal cortex and goes straight to the amygdala, your emotional alarm bell. And suddenly you're reacting with all the helplessness of a small child. It's like an auditory wound.
And the last one, the fourth fingerprint. This constant desire for self-validation.
Oh, great.
To prove yourself.
This is the engine that drives so many high achievers. The person who can never rest, who always needs the next promotion, the next accomplishment, the bigger house.
And none of it is ever enough.
It's never enough because they're trying to fill an internal void with external things. This fingerprint is left when a child's sense of their own inherent worth wasn't consistently reflected back to them. If love was tied to performance, they internalized the belief that I am only as good as what I do.
So as an adult, they're trapped on this hamster wheel of achievement, trying to earn a feeling of worthiness that can only come from within.
They're trying to solve an emotional problem with a logistical solution, and it can never work. The source of that drive is deep, it's non-conscious, and it's structural.
Hearing this, it's a huge realization. These things that feel so core to my personality are actually just programming.
Yeah.
They're patterns built from unfiltered data logs when I was a kid.
Yes.
But that immediately brings up the next and maybe the most painful question. If it's just programming, why is it so incredibly hard to change?
And that is the perfect transition, because that question moves us from understanding the problem to understanding the mechanics of the solution.
Why can't I just decide to be different tomorrow?
The answer isn't psychological, it's physical. It's because every single behavior you repeat, good or bad, builds a literal, tangible structure inside your brain, a neural pathway.
So we're moving out of abstract ideas and into the physical brain. The habit highway analogy you mentioned.
It's a great analogy, but let's get into the science of how that highway is actually built.
Yeah.
Every time you have a thought or perform an action, you fire a specific circuit of neurons.
Like a spurk traveling along a wire.
A perfect image. Now, the more times you fire that same circuit, the stronger, faster, and more efficient that pathway becomes. This is the core principle of neuroplasticity.
And we always hear about neuroplasticity as a good thing, that the brain can change, but it's also the reason we get stuck.
It's completely neutral. It just means the brain adapts to what you do repeatedly. So what's actually happening on a biological level that makes that old highway so powerful? There are three main things.
Okay.
First is just raw synaptic strength. The connection points between the neurons, the synapses, literally get stronger. They become more sensitive, so it takes less of a trigger to make them fire.
So the path of least resistance gets even easier.
Exactly. The second thing is
Welcome to
pruning.
AudioCast.
The brain runs on a use it or lose it principle, so it actively preserves and strengthens the pathways you use all the time, and it lets the ones you don't use wither away.
It's like a gardener cutting back the weaker branches to help the strong ones grow.
A great way to put it. And the third factor, and this is the real game changer, is myelination.
This sounds technical.
It is, but it's a really simple concept. Think of the axon, the long wire part of the neuron, as an electrical cable.
Okay.
When you repeat a behavior enough, the brain wraps that axon in a fatty insulating substance called myelin. This myelin sheath allows the electrical signal to jump down the wire instead of slowly crawling along it.
Which makes the signal.
Incredibly fast, sometimes 100 times faster. This is why a deeply ingrained habit or a panic response feels instantaneous. The thought is traveling down a multi-lane, perfectly insulated superhighway.
And when I try to do something new, a new behavior.
You're starting with a faint, unpaved, unmyelinated dirt path in the middle of a forest. The brain looks at the superhighway and the dirt path and says, which one is going to use less energy?
It's always going to choose the highway.
Always. The resistance you feel when trying to change is the physical reality of that super efficient myelinated structure pulling you back.
Okay, that changes everything. It's not a moral failure, it's a physics problem.
It's a neuroarchitectural problem.
Which brings us to the timeline. Because if we're asking someone to build a whole new highway, we need to be realistic about how long that takes. This is where the Stanford research from 2020 comes in.
Yes, their findings were so important because they put some real numbers on this process. They found that to truly change one deep-seated habit, it takes a sustained effort for somewhere between 30 and 90 days.
30 to 90 days. And that's not just a self-help number, that's the time it takes to physically remodel the brain.
It's the time it takes for construction. And you can break that window into two phases.
What's the first phase?
The first 30 days or so, that's the disruption phase. This is where you are actively fighting the old pathway. You're forcing your brain to use the slow, inefficient dirt path. It's metabolically expensive, it feels awful, and the urge to go back to the highway is immense.
This is where most people give up.
This is where almost everyone gives up. Not because they're weak, but because their brain is screaming at them to take the cheaper, faster route.
So what happens if you push through that first 30 days? What's the next phase?
If you use that new dirt path consistently enough, the brain starts to notice. It says, okay, this seems important, let's make this path better. That's when it starts the structural construction phase.
It starts paving the road.
It starts strengthening the synapses, and most importantly, it begins the process of myelination on that new pathway. It starts wrapping that new wire in insulation.
So getting faster.
It's getting faster and more efficient. And somewhere between day 60 and day 90, if you've been consistent, that new pathway becomes myelinated enough that it can actually compete with the old one. It becomes the new default.
And the old highway.
It starts to atrophy from lack of use. The brain begins to prune it away. You're literally dismantling the old road while you build the new one.
That reframes failure so completely. If you try for 2 weeks and quit, you're not a failure. You just stopped construction halfway through pouring the foundation.
You just stopped before the concrete had a chance to set. You are trying to escape a path you have been walking on, in some cases, since you were 3 years old. The challenge is physical. Understanding that is the key to having compassion for yourself during the process.
I have to ask about the exceptions, though. What about those stories of people who change overnight? You know, after some big life-altering event. How does that fit with the 30 to 90-day model?
That's a great question, and it brings us back to the emotional brain, the amygdala. The 30 to 90-day process is for conscious, deliberate change driven by the prefrontal cortex.
Slow and steady.
Slow and steady. But sometimes an experience carries such a massive emotional charge, a near-death experience, a profound moment of insight, a deep betrayal, that it creates an incredibly strong new emotional memory instantly.
So it's like a lightning strike that forges a new path all at once.
It's so powerful that it forces the brain to immediately rewrite its survival rules. But, and this is a crucial but, even in those cases, to sustain that new behavior and make it the new default, you still need that period of conscious effort to build and myelinate the new supporting pathways.
So even the lightning strike needs the follow-through.
The insight is the spark, but the repetition is what builds the new structure.
Okay, so we've laid out this incredible picture. We are shaped by our earliest years. 90% of our life is run on autopilot. And our habits are literally etched into the physical structure of our brains.
That's a powerful set of forces.
Which leads us back to that huge existential question. With all of that, are we just victims of our own programming? Are we just stuck replaying these old tapes forever?
This is the most important part of the entire deep dive, and the scientific answer, unequivocally, is no.
A hard no.
A hard no. Yes, the past molds us, the environment pushes us, the brain tries to take shortcuts, but these forces are not our destiny. The single greatest discovery of modern neuroscience is the power of what we call metacognition.
The ability to think about our own thinking.
Yes, it is the dividing line. Humans are, as far as we know, the only creatures that can use their conscious mind, their prefrontal cortex, to observe their own automated programming and then make a deliberate choice to interrupt it.
So we're not just inhabitants of the house, we are the architects who can choose to remodel it.
We are the only architects who can engage in self-directed neuroplasticity. That is our superpower.
This is where we pivot from just analyzing the problem to actually applying our agency. If behavior is just a result, how do we start reformulating that result? What are the tools for this neuro redirection?
It all starts with recognizing the power of very small, intentional actions. We always think we need this one big, dramatic moment of change.
The lightning strike.
The lightning strike. But real, lasting change is built through consistent, tiny decisions that redirect the flow of energy in the brain.
So let's get into the specifics. The sources point to 3 key mechanisms for this. Let's start with the first one, which is this idea that a single word can change the brain.
This is about the power of your internal narrative. If your automatic internal self-talk is "I'm a failure," you are constantly firing and strengthening the failure neural pathway. Your brain gets really good at finding evidence to support that belief.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, neurologically.
Completely. So the act of neuroredirection is to consciously, deliberately change that one word or phrase, to catch yourself saying, "I am a failure," and replace it with, "I had a setback, and I can learn from this."
It sounds simple, but you're saying that's a physical act.
It's a profound physical act. You are forcing your brain to stop using the failure superhighway and to start sending energy down a completely different circuit, the resilience and learning circuit. It's not just positive thinking, you are physically building an alternative path.
Okay, what's the second mechanism? A single experience can reshape emotions.
This one is about creating corrective emotional experiences. If your programming from that 0 to 7 window is full of fear or rejection, you need to provide your brain with new, high-quality data that contradicts the old stuff.
So you need to prove the old data wrong.
You need to give it a counter-narrative. This could be a moment of profound, unconditional acceptance from a therapist or a partner. Or it could be the experience of successfully facing a fear you've avoided your whole life.
And what does that one good experience do against thousands of bad ones?
It doesn't erase the old data, but it gets stored right alongside it. It creates a fork in the road. So the next time a similar situation comes up, your conscious mind has a new piece of evidence to draw on. It can say, wait, the old story isn't the only truth. There's another possibility here.
It gives you a choice.
It gives you a choice. And the third mechanism is maybe the most powerful on a day-to-day basis. A single decision can redirect the neural pathway.
This is about interrupting that 90% autopilot.
This is the moment-to-moment work. Let's say someone says something critical, and you feel that instant hot flash of defensive-ness. That's the old highway firing up.
The autopilot is taking over.
The single decision is the act of catching it. It's the moment you use your conscious, energy-hungry prefrontal cortex to step in and say, wait. It's the decision to pause, to take a breath, to observe the impulse to lash out, and to choose a different response.
And every time you do that,
every single time you successfully make that pause, you are starving the old pathway of the energy it needs, and you're sending that energy down the new, fragile pathway of calm responsiveness. You are strengthening the new path simply by using it.
that one conscious choice repeated over and over, is what builds the new highway over 30 to 90 days.
That is the daily practice of agency. It's choosing the hard, slow, conscious route in the moment, knowing that every time you do, you are physically weakening the past's grip on your future.
What's so amazing is that the behavioral scientists, after laying all this out, the power of childhood, the inertia of the brain, they still come to this incredibly empowering conclusion.
The conclusion is always the same. Behavior is not your fate. It is a result. And any result can be reformulated.
That insight changes everything. It takes the shame out of the struggle. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you're just fighting a well-paved road in your own head.
It replaces that self-criticism with a practical, manageable construction project. And every conscious choice is another paver laid on the new road.
You're not just observing the science, you're proving it right with every difficult choice you make. It's the ultimate form of empowerment.
So as we wrap up, let's just quickly recap the core ideas we've covered in this first deep dive.
We started with the brain's relentless drive for efficiency, which leads to that stunning fact. 90% of our daily life is run by a non-conscious automated system.
Then we saw where that system got its programming, in that critical 0 to 7 year window where our brain records the emotional world without a filter, creating those behavioral fingerprints that shape our adult reactions.
And we face the tough reality of why change is so hard. It's not about willpower, it's about the physical, myelinated superhighways in our brain, and the fact that it takes a committed 30 to 90 days to physically build a new one.
And we ended on that profound note of hope and agency. That despite all these forces, we are the only creatures who can consciously choose to rebuild our own minds. One small, intentional decision at a time.
And this really is just the foundation. This is the first step. The research we've been looking at opens up so many more questions.
Oh, absolutely. In our next deep dives, we're going to build directly on this foundation. We're going to explore that frustrating question of why we so often fail, even when we know exactly what we should be doing.
We're also going to map that inner critic, that voice of self-judgment, directly onto the brain's architecture and see exactly where it comes from.
And we'll get into the neuroscience of connection, why we fall in love with certain people, and how our attachment patterns are just another one of those deep learned pathways. We'll even lay out a framework for changing the habits that feel truly impossible.
And finally, we'll move from behaviors to the core emotions themselves. We'll look at what fear, anger, and love actually are scientifically inside the brain.
So if anything in our conversation today sparked something in you, if a piece of this puzzle clicked into place, then please trust that what's coming next is even deeper and even closer to your own truth.
We are on this daily journey together, traveling inside ourselves and hoping to return a little more aware, a little more balanced.
And just remember, this kind of awareness doesn't usually happen all at once. It's not a flood that washes everything away. It's more like a drop, and then another drop.
Right.
And then over time, those drops become a river that can truly change the landscape of your life.
Until we meet tomorrow, be kind to yourself.